I never expected that a simple evening would turn into the worst moment of my life. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when I noticed Simon's phone buzzing on the table. The screen lit up with a series of messages. My heart raced as I picked it up, the familiar name glaring back at me. It was a friend of his, someone I barely knew. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened the messages, and my stomach dropped. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Just you and me, like old times. I miss you." Those words hit me like a punch. I felt my breath catch in my throat. How could he? The betrayal settled in my chest like a weight. Simon, the man I trusted, the man who promised me forever, was planning something behind my back. I could feel my heart shattering as I read more. "Don't tell Alara. It's just for fun." I didn't need to read any more. I could feel the anger rising in me, mixed with a deep sense of sorrow. What did I mean to him? I had to confront him. I had to know the truth. "Simon," I called out, my voice shaky. He walked into the room, his casual demeanor so at odds with my racing heart. "What's up?" he asked, a smile on his face, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Who is this?" I held up his phone, the screen still lit with the damning messages. His smile faded, replaced by a cold look that sent chills down my spine. "Put my phone down, Alara," he said, his voice flat, almost commanding. "No, you don't get to brush this off. What's going on?" I demanded, my voice trembling. He stared at me, and for a moment, the silence echoed in the room. The coldness in his eyes was a painful reminder of how little he valued our relationship. "It's nothing. Just a joke," he replied, but I could see the lie in his eyes. "A joke?" I laughed, though it sounded more like a strangled sob. "You think this is funny? You're cheating on me." His expression hardened. "You're overreacting," he said dismissively. Overreacting? I felt the anger boil inside me. The shock was transforming into something darker. "How can you say that? I thought we had something real. Was it all just an illusion?" Simon shrugged, his indifference cutting deeper than any words could. "You knew I was a free spirit. You can't control me." The reality of his infidelity hit me like a wave. I felt lost, my emotions swirling between shock and despair. Could I forgive him? Part of me wanted to scream, to make him feel the pain he had caused me. But another part whispered, "What if you don't?" I took a step back, my heart racing. "I don't even know who you are anymore. You're not the man I fell in love with. And you're not the girl who used to laugh at everything," he shot back, his words like daggers. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back tears. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead, I felt something new. Resolve. I would not let his betrayal define me. I was stronger than this. As he stood there, arms crossed and face expressionless, I realized I had a choice to make. I could either wallow in despair or take control of my own narrative. The betrayal was not just about him, it was about me reclaiming my power. "Enjoy your fun, Simon," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. "But this isn't over." With that, I turned away and walked out of the room, my heart pounding. I would find a way to heal, to rise from this darkness. I would not be a victim. The game was just beginning. As I sat on my bed, the weight of Simon's betrayal pressed down on me like a heavy blanket. I closed my eyes, trying to escape the pain, but all that came to mind were flashes of our happier times. I remembered the laughter we shared, the dreams we painted together, and the countless moments that made me believe in our love. "Do you remember that time we got caught in the rain?" I whispered to myself, a small smile breaking through the tears. I could still hear Simon's laughter ringing in my ears. We had run through the streets, soaked to the bone, but we didn't care. It felt like the world was ours, but now that world felt shattered. The realization hit me hard. Those moments were built on illusions. I thought we had a strong foundation, but it was all a facade. The trust I had given him was not returned, and my heart sank deeper into despair. I picked up Simon's phone, the device that had exposed his lies. It felt strange to hold it, like I was holding a piece of my heart that he had broken. As I scrolled through his messages, I stumbled upon a name that made my stomach churn. Greg. I had always known Greg as Simon's friend. He was reckless and wild, the type of person who lived life on the edge. But now, I wondered how deep Simon's connections with him went. Why would he involve someone like Greg? I thought, the anger bubbling up inside me. It was clear that Simon had wrapped himself in a web of deceit, and I felt a dark determination start to fill me. I could not let him get away with this. "What are you planning, Alara?" I muttered to myself, pacing the room. The idea of revenge began to take shape in my mind. I could confront Simon, but that felt too easy. I wanted him to feel the weight of his choices. I wanted to take control of my own story. Maybe I should talk to Greg, I considered aloud, the thought igniting a spark within me. If Simon had betrayed me with Greg's help, then perhaps Greg would be the key to my revenge. I could approach him under the guise of wanting to have fun, maybe even flirt a little. It felt wrong, but so did everything else that had happened. The next day, I found myself at the local bar, the familiar sounds of laughter and music swirling around me. I spotted Greg at the far end, a drink in hand and a smirk on his face. I took a deep breath and walked over. "Hey, Greg," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Mind if I join you?" He looked surprised, but quickly recovered. "Alara, sure, I'd love the company." He gestured to the empty seat beside him. "What brings you out tonight?" "Oh, just needed a break from everything," I replied, forcing a smile. "You know how it is, right?" Greg leaned back, clearly intrigued. "Absolutely. Sometimes you just need to let loose. Want a drink?" "Yes, please," I said, feeling the adrenaline rush through me. I had to play this right. "I heard you know how to have a good time." He laughed, a carefree sound that echoed in my ears. "You could say that. Life's too short to take it too seriously." As we chatted, I steered the conversation toward Simon. "So, how do you and Simon know each other?" I asked casually, watching Greg's reaction closely. "Oh, we go way back. He's a fun guy," Greg replied, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Always up for a wild night." I felt my heart race. "Wild, huh? I guess I never really saw that side of him." Greg shrugged, sipping his drink. "Yeah, well, he has his moments. You should join us sometimes. We have a blast." My mind raced with possibilities. Every laugh Greg shared only fueled my determination. I needed to know more. "What kind of wild things does he get up to?" I asked, feigning curiosity. Greg leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "You wouldn't believe some of the stuff we've done. Simon can be a real player when he wants to be." His words hit me hard, but they also solidified my plan. I felt a mix of guilt and empowerment. I was no longer the victim. I was taking charge of my own narrative. As I left the bar that night, I knew I was on a path to something darker, but deep down, I felt alive. As I walked into the bar, my heart raced with a mix of excitement and anxiety. I had a plan, and it involved Greg. He was Simon's friend, but I saw him as a tool. I needed to play this right. I put on my best smile, hoping it would hide the storm of emotions inside me. "Hey, Alara," Greg called out, spotting me. His voice was cheerful and carefree, just like I remembered. "What are you doing here?" "Just looking for a good time," I replied, letting my charm flow. "Thought I could use a drink and some fun company." Greg grinned, and I felt a flicker of confidence. He was easy to talk to, and I quickly fell into a light-hearted conversation. We laughed, and for a moment, I almost forgot why I was there. But I couldn't let my guard down. I needed him to trust me. After a few drinks, I leaned closer to him. You know, Simon and I haven't been great lately. He's been distant, and it's hard. Greg raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. Really? I didn't know that. Simon can be a jerk sometimes. Yeah, he can be. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my words. I just wish I knew what was going on in his head. I watched Greg's expression shift. He looked thoughtful, and I knew I had to keep pushing. Do you ever talk to him about things like that? Not really, Greg said, swirling his drink. But you know how he is. He keeps things to himself. Maybe he's just busy with other stuff. Other stuff? I repeated, feigning innocence. What do you mean? Greg hesitated, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. Well, I mean, he has his distractions. You know how he parties. I leaned in closer, my interest piqued. Distractions? What kind? He looked around, as if making sure no one was listening. I saw him with a girl a few weeks ago. They were pretty cozy. My heart sank, but I kept my face neutral. Really? Who? Greg shrugged, glancing at his drink. Not sure, just some girl I don't know, but I think it's serious. He's been acting different. I felt a rush of anger. Simon had been lying to me, and here I was, getting the confirmation I needed. That's just wrong, I said, my voice steady. He shouldn't treat someone like that. Greg nodded, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Yeah, man, I'd hate to be in your shoes. I took a sip of my drink, my mind racing. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Everything I had planned was coming together. You know, Greg, I could really use a friend right now, someone to hang out with. Maybe we could go out sometime. Greg's eyes lit up. Sure, I'm always down for a good time. Just say when. Let's keep it casual, I said, smiling. I just need a little distraction myself. As the night wore on, our conversation flowed easily, but I was acutely aware of the purpose behind it. Each laugh felt like a step closer to my revenge, yet guilt flickered at the edges of my mind. Was I really going to use Greg like this? But I reminded myself that Simon had done worse. I was taking control of my life, and I wouldn't feel guilty for it. Leaving the bar, I felt a surge of power. I had the information I needed, and now it was time to confront Simon. The pieces were finally falling into place, and I could almost taste the satisfaction of my revenge. I took a deep breath as I stepped out into the cool night air. I was on the edge of something big, and I was ready. I would show Simon that he couldn't just walk away from what we had without facing the consequences. The game was on, and I was determined to win. The day I had been waiting for finally arrived. My heart raced as I prepared to confront Simon. I had gathered proof of his betrayal, and I felt both nervous and ready. I knew this was my moment to reclaim my power. I glanced at the phone in my hand. The screen lit up with screenshots of his messages. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was no longer a victim. I was in control. I found Simon at our favorite coffee shop, sitting at a corner table, oblivious to the storm brewing in my heart. I walked over, my pulse quickening. Simon, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked up, surprise washing over his face. Elara, hey, what's up? He asked, a casual smile playing on his lips. It made my stomach churn. How could he act so normal after everything? I need to talk to you, now. I slid into the seat across from him, clutching my phone tightly. What's wrong? He asked, his smile fading. I could see a flicker of confusion in his eyes. I took a deep breath. I know about the messages. I pulled out my phone and held it up, showing him the evidence of his betrayal. You thought I wouldn't find out. His face paled, and for a moment I thought he might deny it, but instead he looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Elara, Don't, I interrupted, feeling a surge of anger. You don't get to explain. You made your choice. And now I'm making mine. The despair in his eyes was almost satisfying. I didn't mean for it to happen, he stammered. It was a mistake. A mistake? I repeated, disbelief rising in my voice. You call this a mistake? You were texting her, Simon. You betrayed me. My heart ached with every word, but I pushed through. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I could see guilt written all over his face, but it did little to soften the blow of his actions. I shook my head, refusing to let his apologies sway me. You don't get to apologize and expect everything to be okay. You broke my trust, and now I have to deal with the pieces. As I spoke, I could feel a weight lifting off my shoulders. I was finally expressing the hurt that had consumed me. You thought you could get away with this, but I won't let you. I deserve better, Simon. Just then, I noticed a few of Simon's friends entering the coffee shop. Perfect timing. A plan formed in my mind. I stood up and called out to them, Hey everyone, can you come here for a second? Simon's eyes widened in panic as his friends approached. Alara, wait, he pleaded. I ignored him and turned to his friends. I think it's time you all knew the truth about Simon. They looked confused, but I could see curiosity in their eyes. I took a deep breath and laid it all out. Every message, every lie. I showed them my phone, the evidence of his betrayal. As the truth unfolded before them, Simon shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I could feel a sense of satisfaction growing within me as I watched his face turn red with humiliation. Is this true, Simon? One of his friends asked, disbelief etched on his features. Guys, it's not what it looks like, Simon stammered, but nothing could save him now. I felt a rush of liberation. Exposing him wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my power. This is who he is, I said, looking around at his friends. You deserve to know. I deserve to be heard. In that moment, I felt stronger than I had in a long time. I wasn't just confronting Simon, I was standing up for myself. As I watched the shock and betrayal on his friends' faces, I realized this was my moment of closure. Simon's world was crumbling around him, and for the first time, I felt free. I had taken control of my narrative, and it felt incredible. I turned to leave, feeling a weight lifted off my heart. I had faced my demons and emerged victorious. I knew this was just the beginning of my journey, but for now, I had reclaimed my power, and that was enough. The air felt heavy after the confrontation. I stood there, heart racing, my mind swirling with a mix of triumph and sadness. I had finally exposed Simon, revealing his lies and deceit to everyone around us. But even as I felt a rush of power, I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness inside. Was this what victory felt like? I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside me. I did it, I whispered to myself. I really did it. But saying it didn't change how I felt. I thought about the moments we shared, the laughter, the dreams. All of it felt tainted now. I could see the look of despair on Simon's face, and part of me felt bad for him. But he had brought this on himself. As I stepped outside, the cool air hit my face. My friends were waiting for me, their faces a mix of concern and pride. Jenna, my best friend, rushed over and pulled me into a hug. You were amazing, Alara. I can't believe you did that. Thanks, Jenna, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. But I don't know how to feel right now. You just took back your power, she said, pulling back to look me in the eye. You showed Simon who you really are. You're stronger than you think. I nodded, but the sadness lingered. I thought he loved me. How could he do this? People can be cruel, Jenna said softly, but you're not defined by his choices. You're so much more than that. Her words started to sink in. I looked around at my friends, their faces filled with support. I wasn't alone. I had people who cared about me, who reminded me that I still had worth, even after the betrayal. I took another deep breath, and let the weight of the moment wash over me, slowly lifting. As the night went on, we gathered at a small cafe nearby. Laughter filled the air, and for the first time that evening, I felt a flicker of happiness. We shared stories, reminiscing about the good times, and I found myself smiling more than I thought I could. "Remember that time we went camping?" Jenna laughed, her eyes sparkling. "You thought you saw a bear and climbed a tree." "Yes, I was so scared," I chuckled, the memory warming my heart. "You guys just laughed at me." "That's because you were so dramatic," Jenna teased. "But you were brave too. You climbed that tree like a pro." I felt a wave of gratitude for my friends. Their support was a balm to my wounded heart. I realized that while Simon's betrayal hurt deeply, it didn't take away the love I had in my life. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on everything. I thought about my confrontation with Simon and how it had changed me. The anger and sadness were still there, but I was starting to see a glimmer of hope. I had stood up for myself, and in doing so, I discovered a strength I didn't know I had. "Tomorrow's a new day," I whispered into the darkness. I knew I had a long way to go, but I also knew I had taken the first step toward healing. I wasn't just a victim of Simon's choices anymore. I was Ilara Montgomery, a woman who could fight back, reclaim her life, and embrace her future. With that thought, I drifted off to sleep, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The emotional chaos from the confrontation still lingered, but I was ready to face whatever came next. I was ready to embrace my newfound freedom, to explore what life could be without Simon's shadow hanging over me. I closed my eyes, dreaming of possibilities, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Time passed slowly after I confronted Simon. Each day felt like a step into a new world, one where I was learning to breathe again. I realized that the air was different now, lighter somehow, and I was ready to take back my life. I set out on a journey of self-discovery, focusing on my passions that had been buried under the weight of betrayal. I started painting again, something I had loved since childhood. The feeling of a brush on canvas was like rediscovering a part of myself I had forgotten. One evening, as I mixed colors, my friend Mia dropped by unexpectedly. "Hey, Ilara, what are you working on?" she asked, peeking over my shoulder. "It's just a little something," I replied, trying to hide my canvas. But I felt a spark of excitement. "Want to see?" "Of course," she said, her eyes lighting up. When I revealed my canvas, a swirl of vibrant colors came to life in front of us. "Wow, this is amazing! You've really captured something here," Mia exclaimed. "Thanks, I needed this," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Do you remember how we used to paint together in college?" she asked, a hint of nostalgia in her tone. "Yeah, I do. Those were great times," I smiled, recalling our late-night painting sessions filled with laughter and dreams. Mia leaned in closer. "You know, Ilara, you're stronger than you think. That guy doesn't deserve you." Her words rang true. I felt a newfound strength growing within me. I wasn't just a victim. I was a survivor. As the weeks went by, I also reconnected with my family. My sister Sarah visited one weekend, bringing homemade cookies and stories from her life. "Why don't you come back home for a bit?" she suggested, nibbling on a cookie. "We could have some sister time." "I'd love that," I replied, my heart warming at the thought. Being with Sarah felt like a balm to my soul. We laughed, shared secrets, and reminisced about our childhood. "You've changed, Ilara. You seem more free," Sarah noted. "I guess I am," I said, looking down at my hands. "I've learned a lot about myself lately." "Good. Just remember, it's okay to let people in again," she encouraged. That was a hard truth for me to accept. Trust felt like a fragile thing, easily broken. But I knew I couldn't let Simon's betrayal define my future. So I decided to explore new relationships, starting with someone I never expected. One afternoon, I bumped into Alex at a coffee shop. He was an old friend from high school, someone I had always felt comfortable around. "Hey, Alara! Long time no see!" he exclaimed, his smile brightening the room. "Alex, it's been ages. How have you been?" I asked, feeling a flutter of happiness. After chatting for a while, we both realized we enjoyed each other's company. It felt easy and natural, unlike the tension I had felt with Simon. "Do you want to grab dinner sometime?" Alex asked, his eyes hopeful. "Sure." I never expected that a simple evening would turn into the worst moment of my life. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when I noticed Simon's phone buzzing on the table. The screen lit up with a series of messages. My heart raced as I picked it up, the familiar name glaring back at me. It was a friend of his, someone I barely knew. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened the messages, and my stomach dropped. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Just you and me, like old times. I miss you." Those words hit me like a punch. I felt my breath catch in my throat. How could he? The betrayal settled in my chest like a weight. Simon, the man I trusted, the man who promised me forever, was planning something behind my back. I could feel my heart shattering as I read more. "Don't tell Alara. It's just for fun." I didn't need to read any more. I could feel the anger rising in me, mixed with a deep sense of sorrow. What did I mean to him? I had to confront him. I had to know the truth.